All right, today we're going to be looking at calculating correlation coefficients. The correlation coefficient, which is represented by R, measures the strength of the linear correlation. The closer R, or that number, is to 1 or -1, the stronger the linear correlation of the data. Meaning, the closer that the data, or the points, see like these points, are to the line, the stronger the relationship between two variables. Now, real world example. What if I told you that the sale of ice cream goes up when it's hot outside? You could probably go, yeah, that's probably true. You know, because it's hot outside and people want to get cool and they like ice cream to do that. Okay, so that could be where we might find a very strong correlation coefficient. So if the correlation is positive, the values increase together. If the correlation is negative, then when one value decreases, the other increases, like this. And you might be thinking, oh, miss, that kind of looks like slope. Yeah, it does. Like this line is going up, so you would say, oh, that's a positive correlation, positive correlation, positive correlation. Zero correlation, negative correlation, negative correlation, negative correlation. Now, if you notice, I gave you this chart in another set of notes. When the correlation is 1, see how all the dots are on the line? The further you get from 1, the dots or the data start to space out to the point where this is absolutely no correlation because these dots aren't anywhere close to this line. And then you have negative correlation, and it's the same thing. The stronger the correlation, the more or the closer the dots get to the line. Okay, so in this particular skill, you are going to need to be able to round decimals. And so I took the liberty of reminding you how to do that. So rounding decimals, all that means is we're just going to make the number simpler, and we're just going to keep it closer to its original value. So for rounding to the tenths, it means that you're going to leave 1 point after the decimal point, or leave one number after the decimal point. If we're rounding to hundredths, it means you leave 2 numbers after the decimal point. And then if you're rounding to the thousandths, it means we're going to leave 3 numbers after the decimal point. Now, I do have an example for you right here, but I want to remind you that when you are trying to round, what you want to do is find the number that you're trying to round. So here, let's say I want to round to the hundredths place. Now remember, this number is the tenths place, like dimes. This number is the hundredths place. And this number is the thousandths place. So if I want to round to the hundredths place, I look at the thousandths place, which is right next door to the right. And if this number is 4 or less, then I just drop it. Now, if it were 5 or greater, then I would change my hundredths place up 1. Now, in a lot of these, you're going to have to round to the thousands. So let's just kind of put an example here of rounding to the thousandths. So say if I had 7.34778. Now remember, this is the tenths place, the hundredths place, the thousandths place, and this is the 10,000ths place. So I'm going to use this number to round this number. So when I look at this, I determine, is this 4 or less or 5 or more? Well, clearly it's 5 or more. So my number rounded to the thousandths place, meaning where I'm leaving 3 numbers after the decimal point, would be 3, 4, 8. And I don't need to put a 0 here where the 8 was. I don't need to do anything. This is it. This would be the answer, rounding to the thousandths place. Now, I have some steps for you because this is where you will need to use a calculator. So I have some steps to kind of help you as you do this. You will start to just kind of memorize it because you'll have so many problems that you have to do. I don't mean a lot, but you'll just do the same thing over and over again. So the steps to the calculator to regress or to predict how close the data points are to the trend line. This is a trend line. First, you're going to add lists and spreadsheets and you hit enter. Then you're going to place your data in the spreadsheet. In column A, you're going to either type X or you're going to give a label, like a name. In column B, you're going to do the same thing. Then you're going to hit menu, statistics, hit enter, stat calculations, hit enter, and we're doing a linear regression. In other words, we want this to be a line. And there are two linear regressions. There's MX plus B and AX plus B. We always want to use MX plus B. Then you're going to type data in your X list. No, I'm sorry. The X list is on the next screen where after you hit enter, you're going to see where there's some boxes. And in the top box, you're going to put X. In the second box, you're going to put Y. You go down to the very last box and you want to make sure that always says C or greater, the result column, because if it's A or B, it's going to mess up your data. And then you're going to look at the bottom of the screen and round as directed. We're going to do a few now. All right, so here's our first problem. For a science project, Lucy wants to see if a larger body of water has more heat energy than a smaller body of water at the same temperature. She prepared a number of buckets filled with various amounts of water at a fixed temperature and dropped an ice cube of the same size into each one. Lucy then recorded the volume of water in each bucket in milliliters, X, and the amount of time it took for each ice cube to melt in minutes, Y. And if you look here, our columns are labeled for us, and here is our data. So what I want you to do, just in case you don't remember how to do this, you're going to go to New Document, hit Enter, and then you're going to go to Add Lists and Spreadsheets, hit Enter. Now you see how we have these boxes here. We're just going to record this data in these boxes. So here in A, I could either type in the word volume or I could type in X. I'm going to use X because typing in volume would take me too long and we don't want this video to go on forever. Then we're going to put in the data that we see here in the independent data column, or the X, or the domain, or the input, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to put in 12, press our arrow down, 82, arrow down, 82, arrow down, 97, arrow down, 98, arrow down. Then you're going to tab or arrow to the right and go all the way back up to B. And I'm going to put Y because that's our output. So then I'm going to record this data, 30, 9, 19, and I'm still just arrowing down between them, and 21. Now, what I have to say about this is at this point, you cannot go ahead and press menu and continue. You have to make sure that you have this blue box under your data. If not, you won't get the right answer. You'll get an error. So now we're going to follow our next step, which is to hit menu. Then we're going to go down to statistics, stat calculations. You can either hit the arrow right or hit enter. And this is what I was telling you about. You see how we have two linear regressions here? Well, this one puts the slope first. This one puts the y-intercept first. So because we're so used to using the slope first, that's why I'm having you use mx plus b. You hit enter. And this is where I was telling you about the X list and the Y list. Well, you can either hit the center button and see how it comes up X and Y. I'm going to select X. Or if you want, you can just type Y. You go all the way down. Do not touch any of this stuff in the middle here. You're going to go down here and see how it says first result column and it has a C. That's fine. If it had an A or a B, I need to change it. But since it says C, I'm going to leave it and I hit enter. Now notice here, They give us the slope. They give us the y-intercept. Here, this is something that we will not use until much later math, especially if you're going to take AP statistics. This is what you would use there. We're not going to talk about this because I don't want to confuse you what R is what. We're going to use this single R. And so we go over here, it says negative 0.7422. Now, I want you to tab down to that number. And the reason I want you to tab down to that number is sometimes the calculator will round it for you. And if you use this number, you may end up rounding again. So what I want you to use is this long number down here. Now I've got negative 0.7422. I want to round to the thousandths place. So I look at this 2 and I see that it's less than 4. So my answer would be negative 0.742. And I would just leave it that way. And what we can see is that this is a negative correlation. It's not real strong. It's not real weak. But they didn't ask us about that. But I do still want you to think about that. So that's that one. We're going to go ahead and go on to the next one. You know, I thought I was going to clear this off camera, but I'm going to clear it on camera because I don't want to assume that you remember anything from 8th grade in these calculators because we haven't used them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click menu. No, I'm not. I'm going to click on and I'm going to click new document. And please, every time you change your problem, use new document. And don't save anything because the calculator can keep that in its memory and may apply it to your next problem, and you don't want that. So do you want to save unsaved document? No, I don't. And then we're back to where we add lists and spreadsheets. So let's look at this next problem here. We have a botanist at a university is studying oak trees and the acorns they produce. He collected several acorns from the same tree and measured them. For each acorn, he recorded its volume in cubic centimeters, which is X, or the input, the domain, and its weight in grams, Y, which is the output or the range, depending on what we're doing with this. So we're going to do exactly what we did before. We're going to put our data in. So we're going to go to Lists and Spreadsheets, hit Enter. Again, I'm just going to name this column X. And I'm going to put in my data, 2.67. And then I go over to the other column and I put my Y in here, and then I record that data. Oops. Okay. And I have my blue box. I hit menu, stat calculations. I'm going to do a linear regression, X for X list, Y for Y list. I have my C here, so I'm good to go. Okay, hit enter. Again, I have my slope here. Don't need that for this one. We're going to use that in KK13. I have my y-intercept. Here is the r squared that we're not going to use right now. Please don't use that. We're going to use a single r, but remember I said I need you to tab down and I need you to use this number down here. So our number given to us is 0.7580. So again, I'm going to look at the 0 to determine what I should do with the 8. The 0 is less than 4, so I basically drop that and I'm left with 0.758, and that would be my answer. And on this one, It's a positive correlation because there's no negative in front of this number. So that's how you are going to work with KK11. Have a good evening.